The reading is taken from John chapter 18, starting at verse 28. Jesus before Pilate. Then the Jewish leaders took Jesus from Caiaphas to the palace of the Roman governor. By now it was early morning, and to avoid ceremonial uncleanness, they did not enter the palace, because they wanted to be able to eat the Passover. So Pilate came out to them and asked, "What charges are you bringing against this man?" "If he were not a criminal," they replied, "we would not have handed him over to you." Pilate said, "Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law." "But we have no right to execute anyone," they objected. This took place to fulfill what Jesus had said about the kind of death he was going to die. Pilate then went back inside the palace, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the King of the Jews?" "Is that your own idea?" Jesus asked. "Or did others talk to you about me?" "Am I a Jew?" Pilate replied. "Your own people and chief priests handed you over to me. What is it you have done?" Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is from another place." "You are a king then?" said Pilate. Jesus answered, "You say that I'm a king. In fact, the reason I was born and came into the world is to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me." "What is truth?" retorted Pilate. With this, he went out again to the Jews gathered there and said, "I find no basis for a charge against him, but it is your custom for me to release to you one prisoner at the time of the Passover. Do you want me to release the King of the Jews?" They shouted back, "No, not him. Give us Barabbas." Now Barabbas had taken part in an uprising. Chapter 19. Jesus sentenced to be crucified. Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. The soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head. They clothed him in a purple robe and went up to him again and again, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" and then slapped him in the face. Once more, Pilate came out and said to the Jews gathered there, "Look, I am bringing him out to you to let you know that I find no basis for a charge against him." When Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe, Pilate said to them, "Here is the man." As soon as the chief priests and their officials saw him, they shouted, "Crucify! Crucify!" But Pilate answered, "You take him and crucify him. As for me, I find no basis for a charge against him." The Jewish leaders insisted, "We have a law, and according to that law, he must die because he claimed to be the Son of God." When Pilate heard this, he was even more afraid, and he went back inside the palace. "Where do you come from?" he asked Jesus. But Jesus gave him no answer. "Do you refuse to speak to me?" Pilate said. "Don't you realize I have power either to free you or to crucify you?" Jesus answered, "You would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin." From then on, Pilate tried to set Jesus free, but the Jewish leaders kept shouting, "If you let this man go, you are no friend of Caesar. Anyone who claims to be a king opposes Caesar." When Pilate heard this, he brought Jesus out and sat down on the judge's seat at a place known as the Stone Pavement, which in Aramaic is Gabbatha. It was the day of preparation of the Passover. It was about noon. "Here is your king," Pilate said to the Jews. But they shouted, "Take him away! Take him away! Crucify him!" "Shall I crucify your king?" Pilate asked. "We have no king but Caesar," the chief priest answered. Finally, Pilate handed him over to them to be crucified.
Being the Roman governor of Judea isn't a bad job. The Jews are constantly bickering and complaining about this, that and the other, and there's been a couple of half-hearted revolts, but on the whole, they're not difficult to control. Just takes a couple of executions to restore order. In my time here, I've become intrigued by the God that they worship. They spend a lot of time and effort worshipping this God, and making sacrifices to him, and influences their whole lives. Their God seems so much more real to them than our Roman gods do to us. I've been hearing about somebody called Jesus from Nazareth. He sounded like he was a very wise teacher and was performing many miracles, even healing lepers and bringing people back to life. Centurion based in Capernaum told me how Jesus healed his dying servant without even going inside his house. Who was this Jesus? Was he just a great man, or was he more than this? I hope that I have the opportunity to talk to him one day. I got that opportunity a couple of days ago, but not in a way that I'd wanted. So the Jewish priests turned up at the palace with Jesus as their prisoner and asked me to have him crucified. I wasn't at all pleased about this. Oh no. Why should I do their dirty work for them? There are no charges to bring against this man, except he'd supposedly claimed to be the king of the Jews. But it was plain to see that this was no self-styled king. He had no army, he wore no fine clothes, he made no claims for land and property. When he entered Jerusalem, it was on a colt, not on a fine stallion. Anyway, I asked him if he was a king, expecting him to say no, but his reply was very strange. He said he was a king, but his kingdom is not of this world. He also said the reason he'd come into this world was to testify to the truth. What is truth? I asked, more to myself than to him really. Truth to me is what can be bought with money, or what can be achieved with a sword. What truth was this fascinating man talking about? What truth was he testifying to? Whatever it was, this man was clearly no threat, so I offered to release him, as it was their Passover. But they wouldn't have it. Oh no, they only wanted one thing, for Jesus to be crucified. Why? What had he done to deserve this? Later on, after my soldiers had softened him up with a bit of flogging, but they do, I told the Jews again that I could find no basis of a charge against him. I found their answer very alarming. They told me that Jesus claimed to be the Son of their God. Things started to fit together. I remember the miracles that I've been told about. Also remember that Jesus had said earlier about his kingdom not being of this world. So I asked him where he'd come from, but he gave me no answer. Why wouldn't he answer me? This was very strange. Normally at this point the prisoner was begging for his life. Normally they were telling me it was all just an unfortunate misunderstanding and that they'd done nothing wrong at all really. This time I wanted to let the prisoner go free, but he was staying silent Oh, it was very frustrating. In desperation, I asked him why he refused to answer me. I asked him if he realised that I had power to either free him or crucify him. His answer was that I had no power other than that given to me from above, and by that I assumed he meant his Father who is God, which made me feel even more uncomfortable. I'm the most powerful man in Judea, at least I thought I was. The prisoner in front of me was more powerful than me. He was the one who was in control. I was starting to feel like I was just a mere player in a much, much bigger game. It was as if he knew he had to die. Crucifixion is the most painful and humiliating way to die. I've seen many brave men turn into gibbering fools at the prospect. For what possible reason would any man be crucified, willing to be crucified? The reason must be the truth to which Jesus said he was testifying. That truth must be something very special indeed.